confidence level has recently increased. Excellent. Incoming message.
Welcome, Agent, to episode 21 of Behind the Scanner. Your hosts for tonight are Andrew Crew from Virginia, Daphne D. from Washington, D.C., and Jorge Pedreo from Mexico City. Our special guest tonight is Brian Rose from Niantic Labs. The Q&A tool is enabled for tonight's broadcast. Please submit your questions and we will try to get many of them as possible on the air. If you know someone who would make a good guest, please submit their information to us by going to bit.ly/BTS_guest. And don't forget, you can find more episodes and subscribe to our YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/BehindTheScanner. And now, without any further ado, here are your hosts for Behind the Scanner.
Good evening, agents, and yes, this is actually episode 21 of Behind the Scanner. Let's get the show started, shall we? And coming to us from Los Angeles, California, from the offices of Niantic Labs, is our special guest for tonight, and just one, but a big one. Please welcome Brian Rose.
Hey guys,
Brian, welcome.
Hi,
thanks
Brian.
so much for having me on.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us at the end of your workday there.
Yeah, cheers.
In the middle of a rolling blackout at that. So.
Yeah, it's LA.
All right. Well, let's just jump in because I know we got a finite amount of time. So it's as Daphne alluded to, there's no secret that you work for Google and now Niantic Labs. So can you talk a little bit about how you actually got started at Google? What have your roles been with the company over the 7.5 years you've been there?
Yeah, my first job at Google was working on Google Notebook, which doesn't exist anymore. It was deprecated, I think, a few years ago. But I've worked on projects for Toolbar, Google Chrome, and then before Niantic, Google+. But I was always either working with different communities, working with our users, and on Google+, I helped grow the photos community. So one of the things that I was doing with G+ was organizing these photo walks. And the idea was that I wanted to help connect people who shared similar interests in photography or in anything really, and help them connect with one another online. And my first social network growing up was forums or bulletin boards. So that concept isn't really new. Like today you have sites like Reddit or 4chan, Twitter to find other people who share a common interest with you. But I thought what was so cool about Niantic is that what we could do is find people that share those common interests, also live down the street from you. And so we took that idea of the photo walks of trying to help encourage photographers to come together, go on these photo tours, walk around the neighborhood, take photos, and sort of applied that to the initial anomalies. And then these days, I mean, it's grown from 20, 50, 100 people to 1,000, 2,000. I think at some of the Helios anomalies across the Asia cities alone, it was like 4,000 agents. So it's been pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, many just simply know you as a doorway to Niantic, but what's your official role with them?
Yeah, my official role is community manager, and so I help oversee the social strategy for Niantic, and also I help game master the anomaly events. So I work with our team here to define where the anomaly should take place within each city, the different walking paths or anomaly portals, volatile portals, that kind of thing. And what we're doing differently with Helios is that we're trying to involve the faction leads or these faction point of contacts much more. And so they're helping us with defining good areas of play or good areas where they can show off kind of the beauty of their city or the unique portals in their city. And that's been pretty great for Helios. So just I think it's helped improve the overall quality of the anomalies themselves. So I'm hoping to do that again for the next series.
Well, great. But Brian, let's rewind the tape a bit further. You grew up in Hawaii. How did you end up in where you are today, knowing where you came from?
Yeah, so I grew up as a kid in Hawaii, but I went to high school in Seattle and college in Seattle. And the way I ended up down here in LA was basically because of Google. I had done a study abroad. I got my first job actually working in Korea, met my wife there. Google Korea opened up. I applied for a job, but it didn't work out in Korea, but they asked if I'd be interested in working in Mountain View. That worked out, and I was working at the headquarters for a few years and moved down here to work on Buzz.
Okay.
I remember Buzz. From the good old days.
Yeah, good old days.
You know, the gaming community in general has been in the news recently, and not entirely, I'd say, in a positive light. How are things that you're doing bucking the trends on what gaming communities can be and what they can accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about Ingress is, or maybe even the greatest thing about Ingress is our community. The fact that I think a lot of people, when they think of gamer, they think of this terrible stereotype of, you know, people sitting in their parents' basement in the dark playing first-person shooters. It's kind of like, I think, one of the first things that people think about when they think of the term gamer, and that's not necessarily true. Like, I think a lot of the Ingress agents that you meet, they don't identify themselves as gamers. Some do, but I think in general, I've met more agents that consider themselves non-gamers. But it's just the way the Ingress community started with, I think we had made a post when we first launched the mobile client, and it was just a real easy Caesar cipher. It was like a +1 shift Caesar cipher, and it was the message was something like, write the word Ingress on a Post-it or on a piece of paper and share your photo on Plus. And then that's how we started giving out the first beta codes. And I think it took a little bit longer than I thought for people to figure it out, just because we had put the +1 in front of the message to try to indicate that this was a +1 shift. But because we posted it on Google Plus, a lot of people thought the +1 was related to G Plus itself. And the first view posted, so the first view kind of images started showing up. And then as more of them came in, they got more and more creative. So instead of just someone writing out the word Ingress, someone made bubble letters, and they made the Ingress logo, and really quickly turned into this really cool, almost like an art contest, where people were creating really great Ingress artwork to get their beta codes. And that's how the community sort of got kicked off, was this really kind of nerdy but creative, collaborative community. And that seems like it's just kind of grown even more in the last 2 years. And that's not something that I see in a lot of other game communities, where like you hear about Xbox Live and there's a lot of profanity, there's a lot of just name calling, a lot of harassment. I mean, overall, I think the Ingress community itself is really constructive, creative, and positive. And as much as I think we as a community, or we as community leaders can help encourage more of that kind of positive behavior, I think that's a good thing.
That's great. I appreciate that, and I definitely agree about a lot of the bonuses of the communities just from my travels. But an interesting fact about you that came up in our research is that you love cartoons. In fact, isn't the origin of your game name from an Adventure Time character named Goliath?
Yeah, Goliath.
And
Goliath.
why did you decide to go with that?
Yeah, it's
Goliath. Sorry.
my Ingress code name's Goliath TX, and so the way the story behind that is a few years ago I took this road trip to Marfa, Texas, and Marfa's this like really just weird, bizarre, creative place, and we feature a lot in Ingress actually. Like I think one of the initial ARG assets was like some satellite imagery, and I think the code name was Afram, which in backwards is Marfa, and we had put out a QR code there at El Cosmico, which is the kind of goofy campground that has a bunch of Airstream trailers and TVs and things like that. But we were doing this road trip. This was before I joined Niantic, and I was looking at the map, and we were just looking at places to go in Texas, and one of the towns was Goliad. And then I hadn't really thought much about it since then. And then, I love cartoons. Like, it's pretty much all I watch on TV are just Adventure Time, Rick and Morty, Venture Brothers. I'm a huge Adult Swim nerd. And there's an episode that comes up. There's a creature called Goliad, and it seemed like a cool name. Wasn't taken, and yeah, that's what I chose for my Ingress name.
Now, also being a father of kids and watching cartoons, I will say that the Goliad character isn't exactly something that I would peg you with. It's almost, you're like the antithesis. This was a pretty horrible creature, though. Why? I mean...
So, yeah, if you haven't seen the episode, it's basically creatures genetically engineered in the lab, and she's put through kindergarten, and she's supposed to be trained to become the ruler of this land or this kingdom. And what she really quickly learns is that in order to get people to do what she wants, she'll just force people to do what she wants using mind control. But I don't have mind control powers, unfortunately. But the character is just it's just a goofy, and I like the artwork. I like the the story behind it, I guess.
Andrew, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah. We can't have an episode without technical difficulties, right? So it was bound to happen at least at some point. Live.
You get blackouts on the East Coast too. It's not just us.
Yeah, we do that, or storms and all sorts of weird things. As my old boss would say, it's the zip factor. So at any rate, moving along. I think most of us at Behind the Scanner, and probably the people who are watching, are convinced that you are in fact an android and not human. And in fact, we have some questions from the audience that touch on that a little bit. So given that the game is played globally 24/7, what does Brian Rose do to recharge his batteries when you're not playing or working on Ingress? Is there ever a time you're not playing or working on Ingress?
Well, first about the Android thing. Yeah, the only reason I think people think that is because we have a great team. So it's not me that's, or it's not only me that's working on the community, working on the events. We do have a great team of other community managers. You've got Anne in Europe. Masa's working on the Japanese community. And then we also have other people that work on the game events as well. But in terms of downtime, yeah, like I said, I love cartoons, you guys. So I watch a lot of cartoons.
So how many people work on Ingress at Niantic right now?
Well, Niantic is altogether, I mean, there's probably about 50 of us. But I mean, we're spread across Field Trip, Endgame, Ingress, and other platform work.
Okay, so, well, now that we're on the Ingress subject, let's talk about a little bit on the game. We recently saw an agent, hitting level 17. Can you tell us about that? That was really weird.
Yeah, that was super, super weird. So, yeah, that was part of Xana's Ingress report. I think in not today's episode, but it was last week's episode. There was a glyph hack that the agent did, and he unlocked level 17. I don't know too much about what was going on there. I know that he had been talking to some of the other agents in comm, but yeah, I really not too sure what exactly happened.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure we will figure it out in the coming days, because rarely does something happen on the Ingress report and we not actually I'm sure people like Mustafa have already know what's going on. So,
I do
Yeah,
think,
there's a
yeah,
lot of
Ingress Report does like to allude to things or hint at things before they
yeah, lots of
come to
teases.
light.
Yeah, Susanna's definitely a bit of a tease. I went there. Anyway, okay,
Okay.
so speaking of the storyline, Dr. Alvin Lindenwolf and the Exxon Research companies always seem to be up to something. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Have you heard any rumors of any new portal mods or technology like being developed?
I mean, I haven't heard from Linton Wolf in quite a while, but I know one of the things that he likes to do is pull suggestions from the community. So just like our team, we always read all the posts that are showing up on the Ingress community. We read the feedback on G+, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. And yeah, if people have suggestions on the next weapon, the next defensive mechanism, or just the wacky curveball ideas, yeah, we always like to hear them. So I think some of the things that we've been thinking about, a lot of them have come from agent suggestions.
Well, then I'm going to suggest something here. I'm going to take privilege of being on level 15 superpowered. I'm ready.
Oh my
I
God.
was
Oh,
automatic 15.
No,
I've got a great community that we created our level 15 portal. I want level 15 superpowers.
what
My
level
God.
superpowers do you want?
I want to not lose my XM when I tear down farms, like so much of my XM, regardless of how, with my XM bar field. I want to be able to plow down a whole city with a level 15 XMP.
She wants Google to give her a jetpack to fly around the city to do this as well.
That too.
I think yeah, the last hangout we did talk about the Google Rocket Boots.
Nice. There you go.
Still in alpha.
Maybe even being able to put down 2 level 8 resonators or even 2 level 7 resonators.
Self-driving car also works. Whatever.
Yeah. Gas for your car, maybe?
Yeah. I have Andrew for that, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. That's
So he actually bailed me out one time. But yeah, I don't know, just some things like that would be very nice and helpful. I can send you a list.
As a level 11, here's my violin.
I mean, I remember when we first launched Ingress and we didn't have that many level 8 agents. We have tuned the effectiveness or the rate of damage that each XMP can do. But early on, if you were level 8 and you fired a L8 XMP, you could do some serious damage. Maybe not quite as much as what you were describing of leveling the city block, but it was pretty close. And so those are definitely adjustments that we make over time. The other thing that we used to do also that I think just to bring back is we used to do those adjustments when there were a solar flare or meteor shower. I think we did something with was it the Perseids or something? One of the meteor showers where it changed the level of I think the XMP drop rate or the power cube drop rate. So there's definitely there's definitely some room there to adjust those.
I mean, that would be great. I had a great idea too, but bigger circle, so I can catch those portals quicker than my teammates.
No, as somebody who farms with her, please don't. I have to sprint like 100 yards in front of her just to capture her.
So I mean, one of the things that we do is so we have a list of the different features that we want to either improve or new features that we want to add, and we usually try to track that against the features that are coming from the community. And almost always the features that people are requesting, they're on our list also, as they might not be in the same order. So sometimes there are things that either it's a new feature that hasn't been released yet that we just feel that's our top priority and that's what we're going to put our engineering resources behind. But almost always the feature requests that we see, they're always reflected on our to-do list. It's just, like I said before, we are at least in terms of Google, a relatively small team. And so it's just basically a matter of time before we knock those out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Actually, Let me ask a follow-up to that, because one of the questions that somebody submitted before the show started was, what is the best way for agents to actually make suggestions?
I mean, I think the suggestion from NIOps, if you try to contact them through the help center, is to use that official English community, and that is probably the best way of. I like that because if you share your idea, other people can kind of glom onto your post, either offer an iteration of that or point you to maybe a workaround. But then I just like the collaborative aspect of sharing those suggestions or sharing that feedback in that English community, and then having other agents kind of pile on. Even if it's just a +1, it's kind of nice to see someone will post a mock sometimes, and it'll go viral, or sometimes it'll hit what's hot, or it'll get 300 +1s, and then maybe that feature is something that we should bump up in priority compared to a feature that doesn't have as much social activity around it. So there's all that kind of stuff that we look at. And I think the other bit is that even though we don't always personally respond to every post in the English community, we are reading each post. It's just that we don't always have time to say +1 or sounds good or that kind of thing. But we do, between us and IOPS, we are reading each of those posts.
That's awesome. Good to know. Thank you for letting us know. Yeah, we're always very curious about that. All right. Well, we touched a bit about portal mods. Now, some agents haven't been able to obtain very rare link amps in a while. So I have a two-part question for you, Brian. Will agents be able to acquire VRLAs at some point in the future? And has there been any thought given to how they could be more widely distributed? And usually, yeah, we've had to distribute them pretty wildly. But yeah, what can we do?
Yeah, we haven't actually. So first, very rare link amps, they can only be distributed through Niantic. They're always done through passcodes. And what we had done previously is that if you had captured an anomaly or an anomaly site, then you would get to VRLA. And we stopped doing that for Helios because there were a couple issues that we had on our side where even though we gave out a limited number of passcodes, there were many more VRLA that were just out in the wild. And so we wanted to make sure that one, that we try to put that in check, but then also we do have new mechanics that we've been trying to experiment with, especially for Helios, where now I think in Bogota we are doing these media drops where if you hack this specific portal at this specific time, then you would get I think it was the list of all the portals, but really that could be anything. So we could, if we wanted to, start saying, if you hack this specific portal, whether it be a portal where it's a target portal or a portal where the artifact is touched or been on, there are things that we can start doing to try to introduce very rare link amps that don't rely on the passcode distribution. So that's something that yeah, we've been kicking around but hasn't been used yet for Helios. So for Helios itself, I know it's hard because for some of the areas, one faction or the other might have stockpiles of VRLA, others might not. So it does make the gameplay, I think, difficult depending on your resources. But what we try to do by bumping up the number of artifacts and then also having the target portals kind of shift around the globe every few weeks was that we wanted to make it so that even if you didn't have any VRLA, it would still be a little bit more challenging because you'd make shorter links or shorter hops, but we thought it should be still possible using just the rare link amps that are out there and hackable. So it's not something that we're doing today. It's the VRLA aren't hackable items, but that's definitely something that we've been discussing.
Interesting.
Well, but Brian, to use a very rare link amp, we have to plan. It's very tricky to use those things. So, what is the state of the Intel map, and is there still an Intel map API being developed or something like that?
So the state right now, there are several features that you have on the client that you don't have on Intel map. Like you can see your regional score. You can see the global regional score in Intel Map. You can't really drill down to see things like LA's regional score or drill down in further detail. There's other features that are popular feature requests among agents that we just haven't had time to get to. And yeah, it's basically, we realize how strategically important Intel Map is, but yeah, we just need more time to knock those out. And then in terms of an API, I mean, it's definitely something that I think we've discussed a bit, and then also it's something we continue to work on, but it's not something that's released today.
Okay, so with the Intel Map, I don't want to debate the technological implementation in TOS, but is there an official policy on the use of IITC specifically?
I wouldn't say IITC specifically, but just in general, the overall policy is that there's we don't want agents to be using unapproved third-party plugins, and IITC would fall under that bucket. So that would be the official stance from the Ingress terms.
So more about the plugins versus maybe the technology itself, or some of the basic uses of it.
I mean, it's one of the things that's really difficult. I think we do realize that there are agents that use it. We're not blind to that fact. I think the way that we can address that is by getting feature parity with some of the more popular features. If you're able to do some of the more strategic things, like helping operators plan their missions, helping those agents that are trying to create those mega fields, if they could do that with our Intel Map, then I think hopefully it would kind of negate the need to start using other third-party tools. And I think like an example of that would be one of the popular features of a different modded client was having inventory count. And it took us some time to get there, but once we got there, yeah, I think it made using those unapproved third-party mods less enticing. So,
Brian, I don't know anything about programming and developing and anything like that, but it would be so difficult to merge or import or something like that some features from Maps Engine. Well, now my maps to the Intel Map. It would be so difficult.
Sorry, I didn't understand. To import your maps.
You mean like you're creating maps in the map engine to like the Intel Map?
Yeah, to use some features from the Maps engine to use them into the Intel Map.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I mean, I've seen the maps that people are creating for the anomalies, where they're marking out different shapes or different lines, just drawing using Maps Engine Pro or Maps Engine, and yeah, having those kind of features would be really useful for Intel Map.
So, Brian, another hot topic from our solicited questions was an explanation of the portal submission process. I think of the maybe 135 questions we got, 115 were about that. So I'll just bluntly ask, what is limiting the process from becoming more efficient in terms of processing time and the qualities of portals on the first submission?
I mean, I think really it's just probably manpower. I think even if the tools were to become more efficient, there's still so many new portals that get submitted or portal edits that get submitted and a limited number of team members. And so I know the popular request from agents has always been if the limit is the number of people, you have many players who want to contribute. And so I've seen different apps do this really well. I think when Google Images first launched, they had this game where you were pit against a stranger online, shown an image, and then you had to add as many descriptive tags as you could to that image. So you'd be looking at a photo of a duck, and you basically try to run out the clock and write as many descriptive keywords as you could. It's kind of a dumb game, but then it helped improve the the search quality for image search. And there's things like that we could do, taking some of those ideas in terms of crowdsourcing portal approvals, which I think would be pretty cool. The part that I thought was so interesting about the Google Images game or that example is that I didn't actually know when I was playing that if I really was competing against a stranger. It would have been kind of cool if you were basically, like in racing games, you compete against a ghost, and that ghost is it's not necessarily a live player. It's either your previous personal record, or it could be the personal record of another player. But I was just thinking that that'd be kind of a funny little quirk if we did something like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I see that working out. Well, are you ready to wade into the deep end of the viewer submitted questions?
Sure.
All right. So
Dun, 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 dun.
I've been going through the list as people have been submitting them. I think we've addressed a number of them. Just as sort of a disclaimer, though, Brian is the Ingress community manager, not Endgame. So there's a couple of Endgame questions, and we talked about this before the show started. He's just not going to be able to answer many of those. And also, although we will try to ask questions that you've submitted about new features and everything, as a program manager who works with software developers, a lot of the times you just can't get an answer about deadlines and new features. So let's just jump into it then. We'll start with a softball. So Lloyd Hutchings wants to know, how many hours a day do you spend reading social media at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, I basically just live online, and for a while the joke was on G+. I don't know if it was just my account or what was going on, but instead of showing the infinity symbol for my notifications, it just showed a coffee cup. And, that part went away. I don't know if that was just an Easter egg or what happened there, but I get a lot of questions still from previous products that I used to work on, in addition to Ingress, Endgame, Field Trip. So it's, G+ is kind of a madhouse, and that's not including, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. We kind of haunt a lot of other just social sites using Google Alerts. So we try to listen to feedback wherever it's coming in from, especially because the game is so global. We get a lot of feedback on international social networks also. So it's really great having Anne to be able to read the German feedback natively, for Masa to be able to read the Japanese feedback. I mean, it's pretty insane. Since the iPhone launch, the number of tweets that we've been getting in Japanese has just exploded. Where before we were getting a good number, but now it feels like half our stream is just these Japanese tweets. So it's been pretty interesting to see. But I basically just live online.
I'm actually surprised you don't have like a next generation Google Glass implant, just sort of right in your head. All right, Gavin Treadgold wants to talk about missions. So there's obviously been a lot of gossip about it. We got some more teasers again in the latest Ingress report. Is there any interesting tidbits, facts, things you can release to us about missions?
I can't tell too much, but just to reiterate what Susanna had mentioned, there'll be user-generated or agent-created missions, and there are different waypoints that are pulling in feedback from the portal network. So I'm really excited to see what agents do with that. It's not an API, but it's still a way that agents will be able to contribute to the game. And so I'm excited to see the kinds of missions that people create. I mean, you could create something that's as simple as like the college campus tour, or you could follow one of the R characters, create a mission for that. But I'm sure there's a lot of use cases that we hadn't thought of that the agents will come up with and create some kind of cool hack using missions that we'll have to deal with.
That will be interesting. There's a lot of missions I think I could create around the DC area. Only that it was like a historical place with a million monuments and memorials. Gosh. All right. Let's move on. We got, where did it go? So many flowing in. I'm losing track of them all. Philip Malone actually wants to ask a question about embracing watches and Android Wear. I think it was, didn't John Hankey actually make a post? He was able to get a Moto 360, and I don't know, alluded to something. Are there any plans or any ideas, things floating around?
Yeah, I think John had made a post. I think he got the 360 as a gift or something, and has posted a bunch of the Ingress cards scattered on his table. But yeah, there's a lot of our team that wear glass, that wear the 360. The thing that I really am interested in is that one of the things with Ingress today is that you have a lot of these agents at the anomalies, and they're outside and they're experiencing their community, but they're also heads down on their phone. And so with wearables, if we can lift people's eyes up, and so they can kind of take some of that attention off their device and then kind of appreciate the community around them and notify them when it's appropriate to do so using either glass or the watch. Yeah, it could be something really great for Ingress. The thing that I don't know that the 360 does this, but I know the Apple Watch does the I guess the kind of contextual tapping, or their taptic engine that taps you differently on the wrist depending on if you should go left or right. So you don't. I think the idea being that you don't ever need to even look at the watch. It's just by feel or by touch that you'd be able to navigate the city. So, I mean, you can imagine how it apply to Ingress of just navigating you to the nearest portal, or if you're on a mission, it could navigate you to the next waypoint. So there's a lot of uses that we can think of for wearables. It would be definitely a cool next next couple of years, I think, for the kinds of things that people create.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Zafir Rehan, one of our former guests, actually wants to know: can you describe your role as a community manager? And he brings this up because, there's been some controversial calls over the last Anomaly series, even starting back with, 13 Magnus and all that. How do you guys communicate and try to mitigate things going forward? I know you've created the sort of the cross-faction community, but how do you communicate things when there's these controversial issues?
Yeah, it's really tough. So game mastering the live events, if something goes wrong, either it's a glitch on our side, or if an agent, like a rogue agent, comes in, or someone's spoofing in to damage the anomaly or hurt one of the factions, anything that we do, sometimes it feels like it's whatever happens, it's almost always going to have a negative impact, at least on one faction. So sometimes we do have to make those referee calls where there's some issue that occurs, and we have to make the call of what to do next, either to just play on or to manually intervene. And it's not something that we take lightly whenever we have to adjust the game board, or I think the example Zafir is probably talking about, moving the 3 enlightened artifacts from the Channel Islands. And so whenever we make those manual moves, it's never a decision just by one person. It's always something where we try to pull all the facts. We come together as a team and figure out what happened, why did this happen, what are we going to do about it, and then how do we prevent that kind of thing from happening in the future. So yeah, it's never an easy call. Yeah, I think sometimes those manual interventions have to happen just for the integrity of the game. But the other bit is how we communicate things. So if it's anything related to abuse, we don't usually like to tip our hand, just because there are people who actively try to abuse the system.
Sure.
So the vast majority of Ingress agents are legitimate players, legitimate agents. But there are some people who their goal is to take Ingress down or to hurt the system. And so that's why we are, I think, so guarded about revealing different things about how our abuse handling is done. And that's why, rather than try to kind of, I think, mask it with either a silly thing in fiction. Like sometimes I think what we used to do in the past were to blame it on shapers or blame it on solar flares, and I think that maybe that was cute back then, but no, not so much.
Didn't you guys execute or somebody got killed who released the whole zip card code thing or
Probably.
was there some fall guy for that? Yeah.
I don't know what happened there,
Yeah.
but he's no longer around to talk about it. um, but yeah, sometimes it's difficult. So in that specific example with the 3 artifacts, where we felt that we had to manually intervene, but then we also can't communicate why we intervened or what exactly happened. And I don't know that even the agents that were on the island, the enlightened agents who were there, I don't think they really understand what happened either. So some of those calls, yeah, it is tough to make. We aren't 100% transparent, especially when it comes to abuse or some internal information. But when we can be transparent, then we like to give agents advance notice. So, for example, we like to give people some advance notice of new features that are coming out. We don't ever share release dates or go into too much detail, but things like Ingress report is one way that Susanna likes to kind of quote-unquote leak information about missions or things like that. It's kind of a fine line where, yeah, for things that we do want to reveal, things that we feel that will help the community, then we do want to be transparent about. For others, yeah, it's just that tough call of we're trying to do what we think will be best for the community at large, including, not just for a specific faction or a specific group of agents.
I mean, it's got to be tough. There's that old, quote of you can please all of the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but not all the people all of the time. And you've got a game that is played by millions of people around the world, and I don't envy the position that you're in. So hopefully that gives a little bit of insight. I'm saddened to realize that we're not going to understand how you detect bots and cheating on our show tonight, but it's okay. You guys keep that a trade secret. So let's get into a couple of storyline questions. Actually, Mustafa said that he wanted to ask you guys about Niantic Labs' connection to the NIA. And he's citing NL 1331 as an example how it was once owned by the NIA until Niantic Labs tried to take control of it, and then they both began feuding over who owned it.
Oh.
I mean, one of the things that I really enjoy about Ingress is that there are groups that, like Essex, which Mustafa and other agents are a part of, where they're helping either by proposing different theories or even speculating on where they think the story is going. That all gets fed into where the storyline goes. And then with the live events, the anomaly events, the idea behind the initial anomalies was that we wanted agents to be able to control or help steer the direction of the different storylines. And that's some feedback that I've heard in the past, is that the stories are pre-written. And to an extent that is true. There's an outline that is written, but it's almost more like that scene in Back to the Future where Doc is explaining to Marty, this event occurs and it splits the timeline. Depending on the outcome of the different events, a different outcome happens. So if the Resistance win this anomaly, then it'll fork the storyline in a different direction. And so the idea is that I wouldn't really say pre-written in that it's predetermined, but it's almost just pre-written as in it's more similar to choose your own adventure. So that the idea is that we're finding out about what's happening to all the different agents, the XM researchers, so the NIA, the same time that the agents are finding out. And that's something that I really like about ours and about Ingress specifically, is that you're not just watching a character on the screen, or you're not watching a movie or watching a video game, but you are the hero of that story, and you're helping control the outcome of that story or the direction of that story.
Yeah, and that is pretty interesting. I mean, it's clear that some things definitely are attributed to game actions, I guess. All right, last question, and it's from one of my favorite people in the Ingress universe, Yixsheng Li. He wants to know, we are beginning to see more behind-the-scenes maneuvering from Ezekiel Calvin, and with very deadly effect. The first recorded case was when he forced Ni to Hulong. So to your knowledge, who is this shadowy puppet master?
I really can't even speculate. I'm not too sure, but I'd love to hear who you guys or who Yixsheng believe this figure to be.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't know.
It's Andrew.
Yes, I am Ezekiel Calvin.
I knew it all the time. I knew it.
You've heard it here first. I'm Ezekiel Calvin. Be careful. Anyway, all right. So thank you all for your audience questions. Hopefully we got some of them out of the way before we got to it, and we got some of them now, and there's more to come. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. For that, let's just continue on with BTS.
All right. Well, all right. So I'm kind of known to be a pretty social person and like to share things on G Plus all the time. Could G Plus sharing option be extended to hack results as well? And are there plans to integrate G Plus further into the game other than linking our profiles?
What would be an example of that, of like deeper G Plus integration?
I think an example that I know somebody had mentioned was the hack results in terms of G Plus further integration. Maybe being able to vet somebody. So if they had a profile and you could select what faction you are, and if they made that public, you'd have the ability to see some of those things, so that it couldn't just be maybe a faceless account or something along those lines. Just more publicly available with the option, I guess, to release it.
Yeah, I think when we first launched Ingress, one of the things that I really enjoyed is that, unlike Google Plus, at the time, we didn't require you to use your real name. So in Ingress, I'm Goliad. On G Plus, I'm Brian Rose. And because this is a location-based game, and you do, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it is possible for people to kind of pick up patterns based on your agent activity. Like I'm pretty sure that people would have figured out that I work at this building or I live in this apartment because of how I play Ingress. And that's maybe it might not be something that you want to associate with your real name. But now that Google Plus doesn't have that same name policy, I think it does open up a lot more options for our team to consider how we could do deeper integration with Plus. So there are some features that Plus or Google Play Games do, things like leaderboards, things like the Google Plus Games profiles, that I think could be great either for Ingress or for other games or products that we might work on. So there's definitely some opportunity to do deeper integration with Plus or Play Games. In terms of just adding more share options, things like sharing the hack screen, that does sound smart to me, because I mean on Plus you see a lot of the hack of the day posts. So just making that easier to do seems like it seems pretty smart. The other thing too that I think is a little bit different with the share functionality, because it's not just specific to G+. I think if you hit that share option, it'll give you the same share intent for Android, so you can share to Facebook, Twitter, to email, to whatever you want. But it's also, you get a different UI when you use the share feature than you would if you just took a screenshot from your device. And so that's something that I think we could play with more also. If we could, if you have your favorite portal and you use the share function, you'll get a different, I guess, layout of that screenshot than you would if you just taken it natively from your device. So there's some things that we can do to just, I think make it maybe more interesting or more useful. That would be pretty cool to play around with.
I think what Daphne meant was if she posts more often, she can increase her stats.
Her unique portal count, yeah, through osmosis.
Well, moving on. With the global operations like United and Green Marble happening regularly, do players' action and operations really surprise you anymore?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, people are doing just the craziest things. I mean, people are doing so much more than I thought they would when I first joined Niantic. I mean, it originally there was even some questions about, yeah, would people be interested in playing a game where you physically have to walk around? And you still see those comments in COM about how do I move? I tried tilting my phone around, but how do I get my guy to move? And so, uh, going from something like that to the woman in Alaska renting the bush plane, or all the crazy movements with the Helios artifacts that are requiring people to rent boats or rent helicopters, use their satellite phones. Yeah, it doesn't ever cease to amaze me or surprise me, the lengths that people go. And one of the things that I've thought about just watching other agents play Ingress is that there's there's the encouragement or the incentive that you get by playing um, a geo mobile game or a location based game, that just like geocaching, it's giving you some goal and you're physically moving to that location. But what's also interesting about Ingress is that I've also seen people use it as a hall pass, almost that it's giving you permission to go to those locations. So you'll be out farming, someone might stop you or ask you what you're doing there, and so many times, like I've seen other agents lift up their phones and show them Ingress and say, it's okay for me to be here, I'm playing Ingress, or it's okay for me to be here, I'm playing a game. And using games as permission to do things that they wouldn't normally do is something that I think would be really powerful to explore further. That part is something that I'm seeing more and more of lately, and I don't want people to be reckless with it or use it to uh, yeah, cause any harm to other people. But it is kind of interesting to see people use it as, yeah, this kind of virtual hall pass.
Actually, yeah, that is really interesting. And, well, let me ask, what's your proudest moment from a community manager role with this game?
I mean, it's not really anything that I did. It's really just we were really fortunate to have this amazing community. On G Plus, one of the things that I was constantly reminded by is that it doesn't really matter when you're working on social software that you have the greatest technology or the fastest feature set. It's the community that makes or breaks the social software. And so for Ingress, I mean, on first glance, it looks kind of like Tron. It looks sort of like a retro game. It's very straightforward and simple. And to me, I've met a lot of agents that say the reason they continue playing Ingress is because they've met their best friend, or they've met their boyfriend or their girlfriend, or they just love hanging out with these people. And that's a credit not to Niantic or to me, but to the people who are part of this community. And yeah, it's just been really great to see. So many of the stories that people share, either through English Report or they'll come up to our team during the anomalies. Yeah, it's just really incredible to hear. So yeah, I mean, on my side, I'd more I felt like I needed to thank the community than the opposite.
Well, is there still a backend game in API that is in work to release that would allow game designers the ability to build a game around the English backend?
Yeah, that was something that came up during the last DICE summit. So the one that was in Vegas. One of the things that I thought was real interesting about the DICE summit was that Oculus Rift was up there, and they were explaining what they were trying to do of basically the real world sucks, and it would be great to have these goggles on your face and living in the virtual world, and because you can create really amazing experiences virtually. And John went up there and he talked about how the real world is awesome, and there's all these really cool things that most people don't experience. They don't rent planes or go on these helicopter rides or go, on these epic missions, and maybe it's just that they need that little push to do those kinds of things. And then it's something, especially when I meet agents out in the field, you can't really replicate giving someone a high five or a handshake or a hug. I don't know that we'll get there in the near future with VR, but that's something that it's so easy to do if you just meet another person face to face, or go to one of these Ingress meetups, or go to an anomaly. You'll make new friends, and there's something that's just. I think this was a quote from one of the Ingress reports, maybe it was last week's, where I think it was a girl from Bogota, and she just said, Ingress is magic. And that's kind of the feeling that I get listening to the agents talk about how Ingress has changed their lives. And that's the part that's really just kind of just shocked me about working on this project is, the community is just so fantastic. So.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about social interactions and human interactions versus synthetic interactions. So it's much cooler to go and meet somebody in person than it is to slap on an Oculus Rift and drive a semi-truck down a virtual road. So.
But yeah, going back to your question, though, that is something that after John had done his DICE prezo, he did give that call out to basically seek out other developers who wanted to create geomobile games or games like Ingress. So that's something that's still a top priority for our team.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, though. So back in the early days, originally I thought I had heard that Ingress was only supposed to run for basically like a year, but now you've got this runaway juggernaut on your hands. So no pun intended, but is there an end game for Ingress?
I mean, I remember seeing that too. I think I haven't read that article in quite a while, but I think what John might have been referring to is this idea of having a beginning, middle, and end to these story arcs. And this might just be me extrapolating meaning from what I think he said, but I mean, there aren't any plans that I know of to sunset Ingress. I mean, the kinds of stuff that we're seeing, it doesn't make sense to try to end Ingress. But that said, that's not a call that I would make. But I really wouldn't worry about Ingress going away anytime soon.
Cool. Good to know. Okay, so I'm going to have to ask this question. Secrets. Are there any secrets you want to tell us? I promise we won't share this video with John Henke.
This video is not recorded or broadcast live, is it?
Not at all.
We have the ability to block people.
Oh God! Oh God! I made a terrible mistake.
I'll block John Henke for you. That's not a problem.
No, there's no real secrets I can share, but yeah, we're really excited about missions. That'll be coming soon. Susanna talked about doing a more in-depth review of that in next week's episode. So yeah, like I said before, I'm really excited by seeing what agents use missions for and the different kinds of missions they create, but the different kind of use cases that they come up with.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us tonight and being in a good sport by filling ours and our viewers' questions. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate that.
No, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun, and yeah, I really appreciate what you guys are doing with Behind the Scanner and what all the other agents do, either giving them feedback or even just asking your questions on the event page. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there.
Yeah, thanks again, Brian, and thank you, viewers, for watching. Continue to provide feedback to them. Also, shameless plug, don't forget to tune in next week. Same time, same place. We've got Dark G from Germany and Gustavo Guevara from Switzerland.
Nice. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I forgot to ask a very important question. How do I walk?
I'm pretty sure you just tilt the scanner.
That was one of the viewer questions. It was awesome.